Well, hello everybody. Wanted to talk a little bit more about re-enlightening or what's not in it. I've been asked a few questions lately. See, part of the goal of re-enlightening was to come up with a way of describing economic systems within countries that would stand the test of time, that would be independent of time and place, and we could use it to evaluate historical places and times. And I gave a few examples, and this caught the attention of a few readers. One question in particular was my very brief comment about the Phoenicians. Learn more about that. Well, okay, this was a rabbit hole I didn't think I should go through in the process of creating a relatively short, easy to read book, but we can talk about it here. See, ancient Rome was good at one thing above all else. They learned from their neighbors, especially from various tragedies that they encountered. Now, we know them for their martial prowess, that they were very good at creating war. But, well, wars are expensive. Wars are calamitous. They destroy a lot of things. And what made the Romans successful was through this extremely expensive endeavor, they actually got as much as they could. They got intellectual property. A lot of their ways of writing things came from the Etruscans to the north of them, today's Tuscany. They famously borrowed quite a lot from the Greeks and have really admired the Greeks. The concept of republic comes from the Greek world, for example. One of the places they learned from was Carthage. Now, I realize Carthago delenda est. Yes, they had to destroy it eventually, but they learned a lot in the process. And let me talk about one of the things that they did. See, the Carthaginians were Phoenician. That was an independent branch of the Phoenician people. And the Phoenicians were primarily traders. They loved making money. Now you might say, wow, in a time of great wars and all that, wasn't that a disadvantage? No. See, first of all, we recorded all the wars because they were so important, but actually warfare was not continuous at this time. It was very expensive. War is always expensive. And the Carthaginians were very good at farming it out to mercenaries, particularly Numidian cavalry from North Africa. And they were able to fund all this by making lots and lots of money. The Romans picked up on that idea. The Romans had a relatively free market-based system. In fact, as concerned as they were about feeding their population all the time, they would have a grain dole that they would give to poor people, but they never actually interfered with the market. They never took full control of it, as, say, Egypt did at the time. So basically, you had a lot of very different economies and hybrid economies all existing at the same time. But I want to give you an example of one of the things that the Romans learned from the Phoenicians, the Carthaginians. And I'll have it as an example here. Here's a coin from Palestine in 1927. I don't shy away from difficult topics, all right? But anyway, this is just an example coin from the region, if considerably later, during the British Mandate, which is a fancy term for a colony that's been blessed by the League of Nations, whatever. Okay, so you're trading around the Mediterranean, all right? Everywhere you go, you encounter people who don't speak your language. There is no common language between you. How do you trade? Very simple. Let's say you walk up to a stall somewhere in, I don't know, Sicily. You don't speak the local language, and you see a wonderful little amphora of garum, okay, a Roman commodity, a nice fish sauce that they were fed, and you want that. So what you do, you don't speak the language, you hold up your coin, so they know what it is. Hopefully it's something they recognize, and you do this. Okay, what did that mean? I offered 8 of these coins for that thing that I pointed at. All right, 8 is done like this. Now, the merchant might say, what does that mean? No, I insist on 10. So you might say, I just bid 9. Great. And then you are able to sail home with a lovely vial of smelly fish sauce. But anyway, you got what you were looking for. What's important about all this? Well, you see, calculations were not done on paper at that time. Paper, parchment, or papyrus was very expensive. Everything was done with an abacus, which had been invented about 200 BC in the Middle East. and was common throughout the entire Mediterranean. No, no, no. What was used to record these numbers were little symbols and all that, just after the end of the calculation. And in fact, all writing, we know this from the ancient clay tablets of Babylon, were tally marks used to count inventory. See, commerce created the need for writing, not philosophy, not anything else. Commerce is how we shared ideas. Now, one of the things you may have noticed in this when I was giving the hand gestures is this is 5. The numbers 1 through 4 are like this, and 10 would be like this. That's right. The V for 5 and the X for 10, as used by the Romans, is actually Carthaginian, Phoenician in origin. And it was only used to record the result of a transaction or a calculation done on an abacus, things like that. The coins had to be standardized. Well, this little 2 mils wasn't standard, but anyways, they would have a coin like this that was standard. And that's what was important to the whole thing of creating commerce. And that is how knowledge spread around, because these sailors took with them various documents, various folders, etc. This is the importance of an economy. See, people find a way to trade even if they don't know the language. They come up with a standard routine, a standardized coinage. And in the process, ideas spread all around the Mediterranean. Wars that we record and look back on, if you look at the dates of the key wars and all that, there's like 100 some odd years between the big ones, right? It wasn't that common. Commerce, the economy, was far more important to most ancient civilizations. And in fact, when wars are expensive and you have to pay the mercenaries, yeah, it's really all about, in the end, well, it's only 2 mils, but still, that's what they were after. All right? And this is one of the things that I wrote about in, or didn't write about, in Re-Enlightening, which is all about how to compare economies throughout all time through a system that takes into account everything. I'll see everybody. Have a good day.